Episode 28 Little Roddy Goes to Camp. When I was 8, it was an opportunity for my parents to send 2 kids of the 7 to summer camp. Since Maureen and I were the required ages, we were chosen. I think it was fully subsidized by Red Feather, a precursor to the United Way. It was an early get the poor kids out of the city during the hot summer program, and we lucked out. Before my father was financially able to rent a summer cottage, we were stuck in the hot city every summer. Polio was a threat to every kid at that time, the late 40s. In later years, Dad became able to take us away for the summer to a rental cottage in New Hampshire. The magazine beach pool just off the Charles River was shut down in a panic over the polio virus. Although I was a city kid and thought I was pretty hip, I was really still young and not very worldly. I grew up very quickly because of that summer camp experience. This first experience away from home alone for 2 weeks was both educational and shattering for me. Camp Cedar Crest was a Roman Catholic all-boys camp on a lake in Green Harbor, which is a village in Marshfield, Massachusetts, south of Boston. That was my destination. It was very close to the ocean. I do not remember to which girls' camp Maureen went. On the correct Saturday, Dad and I traveled on the MTA since we had no car. We went on the Red Line subway to the last stop, Ashmont, and then took a non-MTA bus to Quincy Center. I said goodbye to Dad as a chartered bus picked me and other campers up and drove us south along the coast to Green Harbor. I was apprehensive. It was the first time I was ever away from home overnight without my parents. We stayed in cabins according to our ages. They were laid out like army barracks with bunk beds lined up in large open rooms. I was paired with a kid my age from Dorchester named Brian Haggerty. I had the bottom bunk. I remember the kids on either side of me telling me that Haggerty pissed his pants and it was going to flow downhill onto me. Haggerty was a pale, skinny, sickly-looking blond kid who looked like he did not get enough to eat. He was always agitated. He bounced and scratched and moved all the time, never really coming to rest. He rocked and twisted and walked and talked and farted and told great, long, complicated bullshit stories. He was just a great find. I was also very agitated and active, but I landed once in a while, and I did not tell great big lies, not all the time. The counselors were just college kids, but they were determined to keep discipline among this group of what they thought were very likely juvenile delinquents, and mostly we were. I did not consider the counselors as kids. They were big and loud, and they controlled my life completely. They had laid down an almost military law when we arrived as to what the regimen was going to be. We got a recorded trumpet reveille to wake us up in the early morning. Then we were forced to stand in military formation in the courtyard between the rows of cabins for prayer and a flag raising with a piped-in national anthem, just like the Army. The same discipline was foisted on us at night in reverse. After morning assembly, we went to the mess hall, which I liked. Plenty of eggs and bacon and pancakes and juice and milk and fruit, and all that was very rare, special treat for me, except for pancakes, which Dad made for us regularly in all requested animal shapes. At home, we ate cold cereal every morning. Brian and I and the other boys quickly made friends at the mess hall and chowed down heartily. I continued to enjoy the mess hall throughout my captivity. After breakfast, there were, quote, activities for us, things like swimming lessons, canoeing lessons, arts and crafts, and organized, regimented, and supervised sports like volleyball and softball, but no basketball. All the things I wanted to do were off limits because I was too young. No canoeing, no swimming lessons, even no softball, which I considered almost a sissy sport. My choices were volleyball, tennis, counselor-supervised nature walks, and arts and crafts. What I really wanted to do was explore the area for trees or mountains to climb or rafts to build or go fishing. I ended up trying the nature walk and the volleyball. The counselors then shanghaied some of the younger boys into the arts and crafts activity. We were seated at a long table and given gimp, long, bright-colored shoelace-sized vinyl strips. We were shown how to braid these strips together into long lengths. The results, such as car key holders, were to be given to our parents. The Murphys did not own a car and had no use for that crap. It seemed that I was unjustly sentenced to that table every morning for my whole prison term. I think many of the so-called modern ADD, attention deficit disorder kids are misdiagnosed. They are the same as I was, full of energy, unable to release it. For an 8-year-old kid, it was pure hell. Today, the so-called experts would have diagnosed me as an ADD kid. The reality was that this was as far from my interest as anything could be. I was simply full of energy with no way to expend it. The regimentation in the kindergarten treatment made me a fish out of water. I hated all of it. The observant listener, will know that I am using prison terms purposefully in describing my summer camp experience. Later, when I went into the Army, I was older and I knew what to expect. At Camp Cedar Crest, there was almost no relief from the constant supervision and forced but unwanted activities. I thought jail would have been more pleasant. There was one thing I loved besides breakfast. On warm, sunny afternoons after activities, the entire camp population was transported in successive trips on the back of a 2.5-ton beat-up old former Army steak body truck to the ocean at Green Harbor Beach. There were benches on both sides of the truck's back deck. Later, while in the Army, I drove that exact model of a truck. It was a marvelous beach with big surf, sand, and ocean smells, shells, fish and stones and jetties, and most of all, freedom from constant surveillance. There were so many of us there that the counselors were mostly concerned about kids drowning. They all but ignored us kids exploring the beach. Everyone looked forward to the open-air truck ride and the beach. So those were the two things that I liked, chow and the beach. The rest was hell. Early the first week, I was awakened after lights out by our cabin counselors and taken into one of their private rooms within the barracks. The camp was dark and everyone else was asleep. They interrogated me about some stolen money taken from one of the counselors. I was scared to death. It was dark with just a little low lumens lamp in their room. I had no mother, father, or big brother or sister to protect me. There was no doubt in their minds that I had done it. How they figured that I was guilty, I never found out. I was sleepy in the beginning and frightened after questioning. I did not know any of the street smarts things that a thief would know about defending himself in such a situation. I do not think I had ever stolen anything at the time. I was a parochial school kid, and the nuns told us stealing was a sin. Everything else was a sin, too. The next day, after being afraid and unnecessarily ashamed most of the day, I told Haggerty about it. He said they rousted him the night before also. He seemed to know a lot more savvy things about what was stolen and knew many more details. But he was constantly full of shit, so I discounted about 80% of what he said. He claimed innocence too. Every night thereafter, until almost the end of my stay, I was awakened and questioned in the middle of the night by those two goons, and I was frightened. I was definitely pissed off. I was showing the beginnings of civil disobedience. I was such a little kid and under such unwarranted suspicion and pressure. I still get angry thinking about that today, 77 years later. Finally, one day, almost at the end of the 2 weeks, Haggerty was gone from the top bunk and from the camp. The rumors were that he was stealing everything that wouldn't burn his hands. He was caught in the act, according to the rumor. Loot was found in his suitcase, according to the rumor also. I was never told that I was innocent. No one ever apologized to me. No one ever acknowledged to me that Haggerty was the culprit. The only good thing is that Haggerty never pissed his bed. I remained dry and relatively unsmelly, but very unhappy. But that wasn't the worst of it. The Saturday came when my sentence was over. Thank you, Lord. All morning, kids were being picked up by the parents. I was the first one packed, waiting to go home. My homesickness was even more intense than most of my fellow campers, with plenty of reason. All morning, parents came for their little darling Johnny and for little darling Billy, but no one came for their little darling Roddy. After 2 p.m., a new batch of kids arrived, and I was the only one still waiting. Some authority figure asked me if my folks were coming. I said, I hope so. He then asked me if I had called home or had my parents call me about arrangements. I said we had no phone. Did you write to them about being picked up? No. I said, how would they pick you up? By car? He said. No. I said, we don't own a car. I came on the bus. After many conferences and talk, they decided that my parents had the day wrong and would be there to get me on Sunday. The next day, but no such luck. Monday came and went. Tuesday also. Finally, on Wednesday, the same big camp truck that took us to the beach was going to the Boston's Haymarket Square for groceries. I was to be brought home by the cook driver. I think they all thought I was some abused, unloved, terrible kid from a terrible family. He took me all the way to my Fairmount Avenue, Cambridge home and dropped me off without ever going inside to see my folks. My mother kissed and hugged me and was surprised to see me. I told the whole story then and again when my father got home. It was the best family joke. It still is among my sisters and brothers. No one loved little Roddy. His parents did not want him and send him away, but son of a gun, someone brought him back. Darn it. At that time, I did not find it so funny. I never told my folks about the theft business. I think my interrogators got into my head and made me think I was guilty. I was very sure that Mother and Dad knew I did not ever want to go to summer camp again. Thank you for viewing or listening to my podcast episode. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, and if you so choose, I ask you to send a good review and perhaps refer friends who might be interested in this podcast series. Again, my thanks.